Daniel stood at the edge of a vast alien city. Now nothing more than crumbling towers and empty streets. The wind moved through the ruins, carrying a soft whistle, as if the broken walls themselves were trying to speak. He tightened his grip on the small recording device in his hand. Every sound, every image, every detail mattered. This was not just another forgotten place. This was the world where an entire species had lived, built their homes, and dreamed of the future. Now, they were gone, and no one even remembered their name. He stepped forward, careful not to disturb the thin layer of silver dust that covered the ground. It had been centuries since anyone had walked here, and Daniel felt almost guilty for breaking the stillness. His boots left a trail behind him, the only sign of life in a place where life had ended long ago. Daniel was a space historian, one of the few who cared about the quiet corners of the galaxy. Many people liked stories of great discoveries, new planets, and bright cities filled with trade and life. Few cared about the places where everything had stopped. But Daniel believed these places were important. They held answers to questions most people did not even ask anymore. Above him, the sky was a soft orange, fading into pink as the sun began to set. A broken tower stood in the distance, leaning slightly, its shadow stretching like a long finger across the city. Daniel walked toward it, passing buildings whose walls were covered in strange patterns. The designs were worn and faded, but they had once been full of meaning. He wondered if they told stories or if they were simply decorations. He wished he could ask someone, but there was no one left to answer. His communicator buzzed softly in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a message from Mara, his assistant back on the ship orbiting the planet. "Find anything yet?" Daniel typed back quickly. "Ruins are intact, atmosphere safe, no signs of activity. Beginning detailed survey." He slipped the communicator away and looked up at the broken tower again. It was taller than he had expected, still holding its shape after so many years. As he reached its base, he saw a large doorway with no door, just an open arch inside. The light was dim, and the air smelled faintly of stone and metal. His boots clicked softly against the floor. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The walls inside the tower were covered in more patterns, but these were sharper, carved into the stone rather than painted. They showed shapes that were almost human, but not quite, figures with tall, narrow bodies and long arms. Some held tools, others seemed to be pointing toward the stars. Daniel reached out and touched one of the carvings. The stone was cold. A faint sound made him turn. It was just the wind again, moving through cracks in the wall. Still, his heart beat a little faster. The silence here was different. It felt heavy, as if the air itself was remembering something. Daniel set his recorder on a nearby ledge and began speaking. "This is Daniel Ross, historian, Galactic Research Division. Date, 24th of Solus Year 4021. Location, unknown city, planet. Designation K-47, evidence of advanced architecture. No signs of recent life. Carvings suggest a humanoid species, tall and thin, possibly native to this world. Species name still unknown." He paused, looking around. Records show this world was once part of a major trade route that ended more than 300 years ago. No reason was ever given. The name of the species has been erased from all public archives. Goal: determine the reason for erasure. He switched off the recorder and slipped it back into his bag. Then he looked up toward the top of the tower. A broken staircase wound its way upward, pieces missing here and there. It didn't look safe, but Daniel had come too far to turn back. He began to climb. The stairs groaned under his weight, but they held. He kept his hand on the wall for balance, feeling the carved patterns as he went. Every now and then, he stopped to take a picture. The carvings seemed to change as he climbed. The lower levels showed scenes of daily life, while the upper levels showed ships, stars, and distant planets. These people had once reached far into space. They had not been primitive. They had been explorers, dreamers, builders. When he reached the top, the view took his breath away. From here, he could see the entire city spread out below him, a maze of streets, squares, and buildings, all silent and empty. The setting sun painted everything in gold and red. For a moment, it was beautiful, almost peaceful. But then he remembered why he was here. This was not peace. This was absence. He pulled out his field journal and began to sketch the city's layout. As he worked, he thought about the strange mystery that had brought him here. The galaxy was full of alien species, each with its own history and culture. Most of them were known, their names recorded in the great archives. But this species had been erased, not just their history, but even their name was gone. It was as if they had never existed, and yet here was the proof that they had. Daniel had studied enough forgotten worlds to know that species disappear for many reasons: disease, famine, war, or simple change over time. But erasure was different. Erasure was a choice. Someone had decided that no trace of these people should remain. That was not something done lightly. He looked out over the city again, feeling the weight of that thought. What could they have done to make humans so angry? That they wiped away their very name? And why did no one talk about it now? The wind shifted, carrying a faint metallic scent. Daniel frowned. He had been on many abandoned worlds, and each had its own smell: dust, stone, old plants. But this was different. It was sharper, almost like the air after a storm. He made a note in his journal. The sun was nearly gone now, and shadows filled the streets below. Daniel knew he should head back to the ship before dark. The city might be empty, but it was still unfamiliar. He began to climb down the staircase. Moving slowly as he stepped back onto the street, he glanced up at the tower one last time. It stood tall against the fading light, silent and watchful. Daniel had a feeling it had been standing like that for centuries, keeping its secrets. Back at the edge of the city, he stopped and looked around. The ruins stretched far into the distance, too far for him to explore in a single day. This was only the beginning. Somewhere in this city, maybe buried under layers of dust and time, was the answer he was looking for. He turned toward the horizon, where a faint light from his ship marked the path back. As he walked, the sound of his footsteps echoed softly. In the empty streets, the city said nothing, but Daniel felt it watching him, waiting. And in that moment, he promised himself one thing: he would find out the truth, no matter how deeply it was hidden. The next morning, Daniel sat in the quiet control room of his ship, orbiting high above the silent planet. The ruins below still filled his mind. He had spent hours replaying the images from yesterday, zooming in on carvings, street patterns, and building shapes. Every detail felt like a clue, but none of them told him the one thing he needed: the name of the species that had once lived there. The ship's lights were low, and the hum of the engines was steady. Mara, his assistant, sat across from him, typing notes into the research log. She was younger than Daniel, fresh from the academy, but sharp and curious. "You were quiet all night," Mara said, looking up from her screen. "Did you find something in the city?" Daniel leaned back in his chair. "I found a lot, but I don't know how to make sense of it. Whoever lived there wasn't primitive. They built tall towers, traveled to other worlds, and traded across space, and yet their name is gone from every public record. That doesn't happen by accident." Mara tilted her head. "Maybe it's still in the private archives." Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. Private archives, those were locked behind layers of permissions. Only government historians or special clearance holders could open them. But he knew how to request temporary access for research. "I'll try," he said, turning to the console. His fingers moved quickly, entering his historian's code and requesting access from the Galactic Central Archive. The system responded with a soft chime and a short message: "Access approved for limited historical records." A moment later, lines of old data scrolled across the screen. At first, the information seemed ordinary: trade reports, star maps, cultural exchanges between species. But then Daniel noticed something strange. Some records had large blank spaces where names should have been. Dates, locations, and events were still there, but the identity of the other party was missing. "This is it," he said quietly. "These blank spaces are where the name should be." Mara leaned closer. "It's like someone cut it out." Daniel nodded. "Not just cut out, removed everywhere and every file. That's not normal editing. That's deliberate erasure. He kept scrolling, searching for the oldest record still intact. At last, he found a message fragment from more than 300 years ago. It was addressed to the Galactic Council, written by a human ambassador. The message was short but carried a sharp tone. To the Council, the continued interference in our colonies is unacceptable. This will be our final warning before action is taken. Humanity has been patient. That patience is now at an end. The name of the recipient had been erased, leaving only a wide blank. Space Daniel stared at the words, feeling a cold shiver. This wasn't just politics. This was the beginning of something much larger. He copied the file to his private database, then kept digging. Some files had security warnings, access restricted, classified level 7. He didn't have clearance for those, but he knew someone who might. He opened a channel to Dr. Tomas Hale, a retired historian who had once worked for the Council. Daniel had met Tomas years ago at a conference and remembered that the man had a sharp memory. For old events, the connection took a few minutes, and then a tired but steady voice came through the speakers. Daniel Ross. It's been a while, too long, Tomas, Daniel said. I need your help with something delicate. Tomas gave a dry chuckle. When a historian says delicate, it usually means trouble. What is it? I'm on planet K-47. The archives say nothing about the species that lived here. Even their name is gone. I've found partial records with blank spaces where the name should be. The oldest is over 300 years old. I think you know why. There was a long pause on the line. Then Tomas spoke slowly. I was there. Not on that planet, but in the years when the trouble began. You're chasing something most people don't want to remember. That's exactly why I'm chasing it, Daniel said. Tomas sighed. I can't give you the name. Not because I don't remember it, but because it's not mine to give. But I can tell you this. They underestimated humans. They saw us as new to the galactic stage, easy to control. They thought we'd bend to their rules, but they pushed too far. They made a mistake, and when humans act together, the result is final. Daniel leaned forward. So the erasure was punishment? No, Tomas replied. It was a message. The Council didn't want fear of humans to spread. They wanted respect. And respect is stronger when no one can even speak the name of those who failed to give it. The call ended soon after, leaving Daniel with more questions than answers. Mara watched him silently, then asked, So what now? Daniel stood and walked to the viewing window. Below, the planet turned slowly, the golden light of its sun touching the broken towers. Now, he said, we find the original records, the ones that haven't been edited. It wasn't easy. The Central Archive had layers of digital defenses, but Daniel had learned enough in his career to work through them, piece by piece. He found fragments of old news reports, personal diaries, and merchant logs. Most still had the name missing, but a few contained strange symbols where words should be. Mara noticed them first. These symbols match some of the carvings you found in the city. She said, pulling up the images from yesterday. See, this curve, this angle, they're the same. Daniel compared them side by side. She was right. The erased name hadn't been replaced with empty space everywhere in some cases. It had been replaced with the species' own written script. A plan began to form in Daniel's mind. If the carvings in the city and the archive symbols match, then the city itself might still hold the complete name, hidden in plain sight. All he had to do was find the right carving. Mara, he said, turning toward her, get ready. We're going back down. This time, we're not just walking the streets. We're finding the place where they wrote their name. As the ship descended through the thin clouds, Daniel felt the quiet weight of the planet settle over him again. Somewhere in those ruins was the truth, carved into stone centuries ago. It was only a matter of finding it before time and weather erased it forever. The city appeared beneath them, silent as always. The ship landed near the tall tower Daniel had climbed the day before. As they stepped out, the wind carried the same faint metallic scent he had noticed earlier. It made him feel that the planet was still holding on to its memory, waiting for someone to uncover it. He looked at Mara and gave a small nod. Let's begin. The wind was cool that morning as Daniel and Mara walked through the empty streets of the ruined city. The sunlight touched the tops of the broken towers, turning their edges gold. Dust swirled gently around their boots as they moved. Mara carried a scanner to read the carvings, while Daniel kept his eyes on the walls. Searching for the strange symbols they had found in the archives, they moved slowly, stopping at every building that still had carvings. Many were worn down by time, their edges smoothed by centuries of wind. But every now and then, a sharper mark appeared. A curved line, a pointed symbol, something that matched the mysterious script. Daniel recorded each one. By midday, their data showed pieces of the unknown name. The symbols were scattered across the city like fragments of a puzzle. They needed a complete set to read it, but some parts were missing. Daniel sighed, wiping the dust from his hands. If the missing pieces are gone forever, the name will never be complete. Mara looked up from her scanner. Maybe someone still remembers it. Daniel raised an eyebrow. There's no one left from that time. She shook her head. Not here. But maybe somewhere else. People live long lives now. Some humans are over to centuries old. Maybe one of them was alive when it happened. Daniel thought about it. She was right. There were a few people in the galaxy who had lived through events most thought of as ancient history. If anyone still carried the memory, it would be one of them. Back on the ship, Daniel searched through the citizen registry for people born before the erasure. The list was short. Many had passed away, but one name caught his attention: Tomas. Hail! Tomas was the retired historian Daniel had spoken to before, the one who had hinted at the truth but refused to say the name. He had been part of the Galactic Council's historical division when the erasure happened. I think we need to see him in person, Daniel said. The trip to Tomas's home took 2 days. His home was not on a busy world but on a quiet green planet far from the trade routes. The landing site was near a small house surrounded by tall trees. Birds moved in the branches above, and the air smelled fresh. Tomas himself was waiting outside when they arrived. He was tall, with white hair and a face lined by years of work and thought. His eyes were sharp, and they studied Daniel and Mara carefully as they approached. You didn't come all this way just to hear me repeat the same thing, Tomas said. No, Daniel admitted. We came because we think you're the last person who knows the full story, and we think it's important to tell it. Tomas gave a slow, tired smile. Important, yes. Safe, no. But come inside. His home was warm, filled with shelves of books and old star charts. A small fire burned in the corner. Tomas poured tea for them and sat down across the table. I remember the day the council decided to erase the name, Tomas began. It wasn't a quick choice. There were meetings for months, debates, arguments. Some wanted to keep the name in the records as a warning. Others thought the best warning was silence. Daniel leaned forward. What did you think? Tomas looked into his cup. I thought they had brought it on themselves. They believed they could push humans around because humans were new to the galactic stage. They blocked trade routes, took colonies, and tried to dictate laws to us. But the moment they insulted one of our colony leaders in public, everything changed. The insult wasn't the real cause. It was just the final push. Humans united like I had never seen before. And when humans unite, nothing can stop them. Mara listened quietly, her eyes on Tomas, and after that, Tomas sighed. After that, they were gone. Not just defeated. Gone. Their ships, their cities, their archives, silent. The council decided the galaxy didn't need their name. Whispered in fear. They erased it, and the humans agreed. Daniel felt a weight in the room. The story was heavy, even without details of battles or events. Why not let people know now? It's been 3 centuries. Because, Tomas said softly, the lesson works best when no one remembers the example. All they know is this: you did not make humans angry. No one even knows why. But they feel it in their bones. Daniel hesitated, then asked, do you remember the name? Tomas's eyes met his. Yes. Silence filled the room for a moment. Then tell me, Daniel said. Tomas shook his head. I cannot. If I speak it, you will want to write it. If you write it, someone will read it, and then the silence will be broken. The council's choice was final. I will not be the one to undo it. Daniel felt frustration rising, but kept his voice calm. If the name disappears forever, history becomes incomplete. History is never complete, Tomas said. It's only what survives, and sometimes what's missing is as important as what's there. Mara leaned forward. At least tell us where we might find it, not from your mouth, but from the past. Tomas studied her for a long time, then gave a slow nod. On their homeworld, there was a hall, a place where they recorded every law, every treaty, every name of importance. It was carved into stone so it would last forever. If anything survived, the erasure, it would be there. Daniel's heart quickened. Do you know where this hall is? Tomas stood and walked to a shelf. He pulled down an old star chart, its surface worn from use. Spreading it on the table, he pointed to a small mark near the edge of known space. There. That's where their homeworld was. If the hall is still standing, it's there. Daniel and Mara looked at the map. The location was far, deep in a quiet region of space. Few ships traveled there anymore. Tomas rolled up the chart and handed it to Daniel. Be careful. Some truths have sharp edges. As they left the green world behind, Daniel felt a new determination. They finally had a real lead. The homeworld might hold the full name, carved in stone, untouched by centuries of silence. From the cockpit, Mara looked at him. Do you think it's still there? Daniel smiled faintly. If it is, we'll find it, and then we'll decide if it should be spoken. The journey to the marked star on Tomas's chart took more than a week. Daniel and Mara traveled through quiet regions of space where few ships passed. Outside the viewing windows, stars floated like cold, distant fires. The closer they came to the coordinates, the darker the star maps became. This was an empty corner of the galaxy, forgotten by trade and travel. Mara spent her time checking the scanning equipment. Daniel studied every image and report they had collected from the ruined city on K-47. Each piece felt connected to the name they still didn't have. Finally, the ship's navigation system signaled their arrival. Before them hung a pale blue planet with wide oceans and green continents. The surface looked calm, untouched by ships for hundreds of years. Homeworld, Mara whispered. Daniel set the ship into orbit and began a scan. The planet showed no signs of active cities, but readings revealed thousands of stone structures scattered across the surface. One location matched Tomas's description, a massive building in the center of a dry plain. That must be the hall, Daniel said. They brought the ship down slowly, landing on a flat stretch of cracked earth just outside the ancient building. The hall was enormous, built from dark stone blocks that had held together for centuries. Tall pillars lined the front, each carved with unfamiliar patterns. Time had worn the edges, but the shapes were still clear. The air was dry and still. As Daniel and Mara stepped closer, their footsteps echoed faintly against the stone. Inside, the hall was wide and open, with a high ceiling that seemed to vanish into shadow. Rows of stone panels stood along the walls, each covered in the same tall, flowing script they had seen in the city on K-47. The panels stretched so far that Daniel could not see the end of them. This is it, Mara said, her voice low. Daniel moved closer to the nearest panel, running his fingers along the carved lines. The script had a graceful flow, the work of skilled hands. Here were the records Tomas had spoken of, laws, treaties, agreements, and somewhere among them would be the name. They worked slowly, scanning each panel into their database, ours. Passed as they moved from wall to wall. Most of the text was unreadable to them, but every so often a certain grouping of symbols repeated. Mara pointed it out. That's the one, she said. It's the same group we saw in the old archive files. Daniel studied it. The name was there, hidden in its own language. He didn't speak it, but he could feel the weight of it. It was more than a word. It carried pride, history, and identity. Mara looked at him. So this is what was erased. Daniel nodded. This is it. The sound of it was taken away, but the shape survived. They kept scanning until they reached the far end of the hall. There, the panels changed. The script was still present, but now the carvings showed pictures alongside the words. The scenes told a story, ships leaving the planet, meeting with other species, signing agreements. Then, slowly, the tone shifted. The ships blocked star routes, foreign vessels were turned away. There were carvings of tall, thin figures standing over shorter ones, their posture full of confidence and control. And then, one panel showed something different. The tall figures faced humans for the first time. The humans were fewer in number, but their stance was strong. The carved expressions were not friendly. Mara ran her hand over the image. This must be when it started. Daniel looked closer. The spark. The next panels told the rest. The meetings became tense. The tall figures stood over the humans again. But now the humans were joined by others, men and women from many worlds, standing side by side. The final carving was the most striking. The tall figures were gone. The humans stood alone, facing outward toward the stars. Daniel stepped back. The message was clear. This species had tried to control humanity, and something had happened to turn that control into open defiance. As they finished their scans, Daniel thought of Tomas's words that the insult to a colony leader had been the final push. It made sense now. The carvings showed a slow build of pressure, each action chipping away at patience until one moment tipped it over the edge. Outside, the sun was lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the dry plain. The hall stood silent as ever, holding its secrets in stone. Back aboard the ship, Mara transferred the scans into their system. The computer began piecing together the language using the symbols they had collected from K for 7. It was a slow process, but the machine could match patterns faster than any human mind. While they waited, Daniel looked out the window at the planet below. They must have believed humans were too new to stand up to them, he said. They thought we'd bend, like others did before us. But we didn't, Mara said. No, Daniel agreed. We stood together. And in the end, the galaxy learned not to test that. The computer beeped, breaking the quiet. The translation process was complete. On the screen appeared the alien name. Strange to the human eye, full of sounds Daniel could not imagine speaking. But it was whole again. Mara looked at him. Do we say it? Daniel thought for a long moment. The name sat there on the screen, waiting. It was the key to the mystery that had brought them across light. Yours, yet Tomas's warning echoed in his mind. If we speak it, Daniel said slowly, it lives again. If we keep it silent, the lesson stays. Mara didn't answer. She simply turned off the screen. They sat in the quiet for a while. The hum of the ship the only sound. Outside, the stars began to appear, bright against the darkening sky. Daniel felt the weight of the decision. For now, the name would remain silent, but he had seen it. He knew it was real, and somewhere deep inside, he understood why no one else remembered. If you like, I can now move to part 5. The turning tide, keeping the same 1100-word, simple, engaging third-person style. So the flow continues naturally. Would you like me to start part 5? You said, part 5 1100 words kaleko, or interesting hunachea, or third-person style malek niha, or simple basic English ka. Don't use any violated word, so please avoid any violated content. Don't use ... Dachig said, here's part 5 of the last species that made humans angry. No one remembers their name anymore, written in third-person style. Simple basic English, about 1100 words, with no offensive content. Part 5, the turning titted stars outside the ship's windows twinkled quietly as Daniel and Mara studied the data from the ancient hall on the alien homeworld. The scans and translations had revealed much, but there was one part of the story that still needed telling. How the humans had changed everything. Daniel looked at the images again. There were no battle scenes carved on the stone walls. No weapons or fights. Instead, the carvings showed the quiet aftermath, empty alien ships drifting in space, silent cities, and ruined outposts. It was a story told not through war, but through something deeper. Mara pointed to one of the panels. Look here. These scenes show humans working together, not fighting. They are building, fixing, connecting. Daniel nodded. It's like a wave spreading across the stars, a movement, not a battle. The human colonies had grown quickly during that time, linked by trade and shared goals. But this species had tried to stop them, blocking routes and controlling key systems. The carvings on the planet's hull showed the alien fleet trying to hold back the human expansion. Daniel had read in old reports that the humans were considered new and weak by many in the galaxy. The alien species saw them as easy to control. But the carvings told a different story. Humans were patient and clever. They built bridges where others built walls. The key moment came when the insult to the colony leader happened. It was carved clearly in one panel, the alien figure towering over the human leader. Speaking harshly, the human's face was calm but determined. That calm was not weakness. It was that moment, Daniel said softly, when humans stopped being patient. The next carving showed humans standing together, not just from one world, but many. Different ships from different colonies gathered in space, their flags flying side by side. They shared knowledge, technology, and strength. Mara smiled. Unity, yes? Daniel agreed. Humans learned that alone they were small, but together they were powerful. The alien ships slowly withdrew, their faces carved with surprise and fear. The hull showed empty seats at their command centers, silent alarms, and retreating fleets. No one had expected humans to unite so fully. Daniel thought of Tomas's words again. The species had made a mistake by underestimating humans. They had pushed too hard, and the result was the complete loss of their presence in the galaxy. Humans don't forget, Daniel said. When they get angry, they act with purpose. Mara nodded. And they don't waste energy on hate. They focus on building a future. Daniel's eyes met hers. That's the real reason the name was erased, not to hide fear, but to show respect for what humans can do. As the ship left orbit and sailed into the stars, Daniel felt anew respect for the strength behind humanity. The story was not one of destruction, but of change, a turning point when humans became a force no one could ignore. The stars stretched before them, full of possibilities, and Daniel knew their journey was not over. The ship moved steadily through the quiet stars as Daniel stared at the artifact resting on the small table in front of him. It was a simple object, a carved stone tablet, dark and heavy, covered with the same strange symbols they had seen in the ruins and the hall. But this tablet was different. It was the key to everything. They had found it deep inside a hidden vault beneath the ruins on K-47. The entrance had been sealed by layers of stone and metal, untouched for centuries. Daniel and Mara had worked carefully to unlock the door using ancient codes found in the carvings. Now, here it was. The tablet carried the full name of the lost species. Daniel traced the smooth carvings with his finger. The name was long and difficult to say, even in translation, but it carried pride, history, and the story of a proud people who had once stood tall in the galaxy. Mara looked at Daniel quietly. So, this is the name no one remembers. Daniel nodded. Yes, it was erased from history, but it was never truly lost. He thought about Tomas's warning, the power of silence, and the strength in forgetting. The name had been wiped from records not to erase the people, but to remind the galaxy why humans should never be tested. Daniel picked up the tablet and held it carefully. The truth is clear now. They were not weak. They were proud and strong. But they made a mistake. They thought they could control humans. Mara smiled softly. And humans showed them what unity means. Daniel's eyes were thoughtful. Yes, the humans didn't just fight back. They changed the future. The name may be silent, but the lesson is loud. For a long time, the two sat quietly, the tablet between them like a bridge to the past. Finally, Daniel spoke. I will keep the name safe. I will not share it with the world. Some things are better left in the past. Mara agreed. The story is more important than the name. The story teaches us how far humans can go when they stand together, outside. The stars glowed softly through the windows. The galaxy was wide and full of mysteries. But this one was theirs to protect. Daniel looked at the tablet once more and then carefully placed it in a locked case. He had come searching for a forgotten name. But what he found was a greater truth. the strength of humans, and the power of silence. The ship was quiet as it moved through the starry night. Daniel sat near the viewing window, watching distant lights flicker. The tablet rested safely in its case beside him. It was strange to think how something so small held such a great secret. The name of a lost species, erased from history but still alive in silence. Mara joined him. Carrying 2 cups of warm tea, she handed one to Daniel and sat down. They shared a calm moment, the hum of the ship the only sound. "We found the name," Mara said softly. "But we never spoke it." Daniel nodded. "Some things are too powerful for words. The silence is the message." Mara smiled. "The galaxy knows. It feels the lesson without needing to say it." Daniel looked out at the stars. Humans are strong when they stand together. That strength is why no one remembers the name. It is a warning and a promise. The ship's computer beeped softly, reminding Daniel of the report he still had to send. He hesitated. How could he explain this story without breaking the silence? He decided to write carefully, sharing the story without the name, letting the lesson speak for itself. As he worked, Daniel thought about the past and the future. The lost species had tried to control humans, but humans had changed everything. They had taught the galaxy that respect must be earned and that unity is a powerful shield. Mara watched him, her eyes bright. "Do you think the silence will last?" Daniel smiled. "I hope so. Some stories are better told by what is not said. The silence keeps the lesson alive." Days passed as they traveled back toward human space. Daniel shared his story with a few trusted historians, careful to protect the secret. The message spread quietly. Humans must never be underestimated or provoked. When they finally reached the busy spaceport, Daniel felt the weight of his journey lift. He looked back one last time at the stars. The lost species was gone, but their story was now part of human history, told through silence and respect. Daniel stepped off the ship, ready to continue his work. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, but he had learned one clear truth. Some lessons are the strongest when they are left unspoken. And with that, the story of the last species that made humans angry became a quiet legend, a warning, whispered through time, carried in the silence of forgotten names.